We're having fun on a Monday morning around here, getting high tech again with just a little rock and roll to welcome you to No More Mondays, the podcast where we explore the human side of modern work so that you can design the career, the business, and most importantly, the life that you love. I am your host, Angie Callan, and today's episode is brought to you by Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries. It is my new book, and it is here in the flesh because it is out in the world. You can buy it wherever books are sold. And if you want to learn more, head on over to Scary Good Read, because I promise it is one, scarygoodread.com, and grab a copy today. Now, on with the episode. If you are anything like me, you kind of live life at full speed. And if you've read Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries, I know a little bit about how that foot on the gas can catch up to us. And so does today's guest. I am talking to Cheree Sauer. She is a coach and she is the CEO of Success Without Sacrifice, which should basically tell you everything that you need to know about the conversation we are about to have. But before we get into it, I'll tell you that she helps high achieving leaders, business owners, parents, sometimes all three at once, build sustainable success without burning out in the process. She's got a super cool background in sports psychology, decades of entrepreneurial experience, and a life with her husband and kids that's built around intention, freedom, also maybe some on-the-road living, and real life fulfillment. So she knows a whole lot about discovering life beyond the Sunday scaries. So if you have started to wonder if you can keep up the pace that's costing you more than it's worth, stay right where you're at. Cheree, welcome to No More Mondays.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me here, Angie. Thank you for all of you listening and watching. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. And I'll give everybody a little bit of background because I've probably had 20 guests over the last year and a half who have come through The Thing. And Cheree is part of The Thing phase 2 from this past fall. So we actually got to share a stage and meet in person, and definitely had some commonalities, not just in this idea of success without sacrifice, but some, living in things with wheels and all those kinds of things. And so I want to kick things off by learning a little bit more about you and your perspective on this idea of success without sacrifice, because you've lived a few versions of high performance, from working with, elite athletes to being mom, business owner, juggling all those at once. And I know you're pretty open about admitting that caught up with you. And so I want to understand more about how and when you realized that this kind of, let's say, traditional expectation of success was not your jam.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so good. And also hard to answer because I don't think it was one specific moment, right? Like in my career, it was a lot of nights and weekends and traveling nonstop. And that caught up to me after I had kids, and, there were no boundaries. People had access to me 24/7. And so that was my first, I'm done with this. Moved into being a stay-at-home mom and thought dinner will be on the table by 5. It'll be easy. And after 4 months, I hated my life. I resented my kids. And I realized I am naturally a high achiever. Me just being a stay-at-home mom, not just that's hard work, right? But doing the mundane is not for me. And so I realized that also wasn't for me, right? I needed to be actively working in order for me to be fulfilled and happy, and actually as a good mom and a good wife. So it was kind of these multiple phases. And then I moved into being a business owner because I wanted the flexibility to work and to be home with my family when I wanted to be. And also the first 3 years, I recognized that I was chasing this success and this achievement, which I had really been doing my whole life, for validation and for my worthiness. I had a lot of perfectionism, things. And it wasn't really, I guess I'll say there wasn't a specific moment in time. It was just kind of these layers over time that I started to peel back and recognize that, one, it doesn't matter how much money or how much success you have. You will never, ever be fulfilled by that if you are not internally fulfilled, right? If you aren't internally okay with who you are without that success and that achievement. And so that's what I find for a lot of people. We start these businesses and we think, oh, once I hit 100K or once I hit 1 million, then I'll be happy. And we have all these people out here, business owners, that have reached the goals, and they look around and they're like, I'm miserable. I'll be my life. I want to burn my business down. And so that's my mission in life, is to help people really understand they really can have all the success they want in all areas of their life, without sacrificing what's actually really important to them.
And there's a hidden key in there that you have to know what you want. You have to know what success looks like for you.
Yeah.
And this is important because definitely in corporate America, and I would say that in generally in society, kind of up until this point, money has always been the definition of success. However, we talk about this book, The 5 or the 6 Regrets of the Dying, a whole lot. I can't remember if it's 5 or 6 ever. However, I can guarantee you none of them are, I wish I had made more money.
Yeah.
When we're on our deathbed, right? And so I also think what's interesting, and you actually set up something that I wanted to ask you about, which, because what I love about you is like both the physiological and the psychological aspects of why we get burnout, why things don't feel fulfilling, and what we do about it. And what you said, I think so perfectly encapsulates the fact that it isn't always just one big bang.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to peel back the layers. And sometimes we go from one extreme to the other, thinking that this burn it all down mentality is going to, drastically change. And what you found, there isn't. And so I'm curious what some of the signs were for you and what you see in others, whether they're subtle or not so subtle, of, when we're approaching this point of like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me personally, it was like just feeling like I was constantly overwhelmed, constantly stressed, constantly worried about money or about what people thought of me. Lack of motivation, apathetic. That's what happens to a lot of people, is they just lose all motivation and all passion. That's probably like the biggest sign that it's like, oh my gosh, I've been working so hard for this thing, and now either it's here or it's not. And I feel so discontent and miserable inside. And I just don't have the drive that I have that I used to have. Especially when you're first starting a business or a job, like it's exciting and it's new, right? And then over time you kind of get in the mundane. And I think a lot of people get stuck in doing things they're not really good at. And that becomes very energy draining. And so we become very reactive, whether it's in your business or your life, because we don't have a clear direction of where we should be spending our time and our energy.
Yeah. I'll even add something. We spend time doing things that either we're not good at or we might be good at, but we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates the same energy drain that many other things do. And so if you've never Eisenhower matrixed your way into high interest, high impact type activities to take stock of your day, there's a fun little Google that. You'll thank me. But you also brought up something that I wanted to dive into a little bit, apathy, because I have seen this time and again when I was doing a ton of career coaching. I saw it a lot with people who wanted to change careers, and they kind of had waited too long to start the exploration, and they kind of went over the other side of the bell curve of apathy and just couldn't connect to anything. And so why do we wait so long?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think it's a fear of change, right? It's a fear of stepping into something new, stepping out of your comfort zone. My husband, before we started RVing, he was in a job and he would joke that like a monkey could do his job. And he was so burned out because it wasn't challenging. It wasn't, there was no passion in it. Right. And so he got to a point where he was depressed and like kind of hated his life. And but he was so stuck in like, he was the provider. Right. And needing that safety and that security. And it wasn't until like, okay, we are going to RV. And if we're going to do this, like, you've got to quit your job. Right. And so we had a path forward of, how I was going to bring in income, but he did it. He took the leap of faith, and he came back when we stopped RVing. He came back. People found out we were back in town, and he ended up landing a job that is twice the pay and way more room for growth. Right. And so I think we get so stuck in this, the fear of of like, what if it's not going to be there? Like, what if I fail? What if, all the what ifs that we can go down. And sure, what if you fail? You can go get another job, right? Or like, you can go get a job in grocery if you need to. But it feels scarier than that step actually is. I think it's a lot of that mental aspect, and it's true in athletes too, right? Like I saw that a lot in athletes. if you send an athlete out on the field after an injury and they have fear, they're going to get injured.
You're going to get re-injured.
Right. And so it's a lot of the psychology and the mental game. And I love it. Like business is 80% mental. It's 20% strategy. Right.
You stole that from me, but yes, I tell people that it is all the time, especially, entrepreneurship for sure. There is no better exploration into self-discovery than starting and building a business. But I think a lot of that is because 80% of it is mindset. And, the thing that I think is like a theme of all those little pieces that I'll bring together is like our brains have way more capacity than we ever tap into. We have neuroplasticity to retrain our brains, which is why like positive thinking and abundance mindset actually has data to back it up. And if we constantly operate out of that like fear space, which is a scarcity mindset, we are constantly living in what if catastrophizing mode instead of what if we go live in an RV for a few years and I come back and make twice as much money with twice as much growth? Hey, cool. And I think the big thing that I've always found is that a lot of people who stay in the fear place don't actually look at the reality of the change to say, what's the likelihood of the worst case scenario even playing out? Because we end up finding out it's almost nil.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's like, 'cause I was just working with a client yesterday and they were trying to make a decision. Like, do I hire? Like, I need to hire in order to grow. And I'm scared that like, I'm going to spend all this money on hiring. And what if it doesn't work out? And so we went worst case scenario. What happens if it doesn't work out? What happens? What's worst case scenario if you don't hire and you stay exactly where you are? And so he was like, oh, like it's like this light bulb. But our brains the job of our brains is to keep us safe and protected, right? That's the job of our subconscious, and that drives our decisions. And so you have to unlayer where that's really coming from and where that stems from. And Angie, you had said positive thinking, and yes, positive thinking is powerful. But what I will say about that and what I've found in my own life and with clients is you can say affirmations all day long and positive thinking, but if you don't actually dig out the root of what's causing those negative thoughts, continue to stay in that cycle, right? Because it doesn't feel safe to your brain. And so it just constantly brings you back down to the, your thermostat, your normal thermostat until you change it, until you hit the dial up on the thermostat, then it can go to a new level.
That's an interesting thing to think about. We can affirm our way into many, many things, but sometimes we're faking it, right? Yeah. Like we're trying to fake ourselves out instead of like truly affirm something. And I think that's a good point to talk about like the flip side of this coin. And that is like the definition of success here, right? Because these are some of the things that like hold us back from at least trying to take action. But how can we start to really think about what success means to us so that we can then decide what to and what not to sacrifice?
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Because people ask that all the time. Like, you have to sacrifice something. 100% you have to sacrifice something. You have to sacrifice time and money and right. But you get to choose what to sacrifice. And that's what happens is we often get in this business, we get on this trajectory of we're chasing the income, but we forget why we're doing it in the first place. Yep. And so one of the exercises that I have clients do is basically just like create a circle, like write down a circle on a piece of paper and think about like, what are all the things that are important to you in the next 12 months? Not just financially, but also like joy, peace, happiness, family, relationships, right? And then those are the things that you're going to protect. So anything that you say yes to or say no to is all to protect those things that you are important to you, that you value. And then outside of that circle, like what are the things you're willing to sacrifice? We think that I hate the like sacrifice your sleep for success. I'm like, that is one of the worst things.
That's the worst thing.
The worst thing. But you can sacrifice binge watching Netflix or doom scrolling, right? All those little time sucks that we don't even realize are sucking our time because we're not clear on what our actual intentions are. And sacrificing fear, your comfort zone, right? Those are things that you get to choose to sacrifice. And yes, am I sacrificing time with my kids and my family right now to be here? Yeah, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make because I'm going to spend time with them in the evening, good quality time with them. And so it really comes down to intention and getting really clear on what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you comfortable with? And what are you not comfortable with? And nobody can make that decision for you. You have to, you have to choose that for yourself, but you get to choose it instead of just being, taken with the wind and it taking you wherever it wants to. It doesn't have to be that way. And I lived that way for the first 35 years of my life.
Somebody once referred to that to me as specifically it was a career tumbleweed. And I'm like, that is such a spot on visual of what it can feel like when you're just kind of like untethered. And I think the big, the big piece I want everyone to really think about and take away is like that inner circle work of like, what do I value? Because you can't decide what you're willing to sacrifice, or in the term I would throw it at, what's a worthy trade-off. Yeah. If you don't know what's in the middle of that circle. And I think this comes back to something you said when we first kicked off, which is the inner fulfillment versus outer success. Talk to me a little bit more about the correlation between those two.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you like my own personal story. I grew up in a very kind of unstable childhood. And so I found my safety in what I could control. And that was my grades. That was achievement, right? That's what felt safe for me. And so I chased that for a long time. It was also for validation. When I was in fourth grade, I was friends with a couple girls, and we were all invited to each other's birthday parties. And then my friend Jennifer's birthday party came up, and I was the only one in the group that wasn't invited. And so my little brain took that, I'm not good enough. Her family makes more money than me. They live in a nicer house. I'm not worthy enough, right? And so that led me to spending the rest of my life feeling like I had to prove myself. It affected sales, it affected everything, right? And so even when I hit the goals, there was still a missing piece inside of me because I was always seeking this validation from other people. And it wasn't until I started to uncover that root of where that came from and change the story that it calmed my nervous system down, and I was able to and that's a lot of it, right? Is your nervous system is in fight or flight mode. And that was me for a long time. It was just in constant fight mode. And so it wasn't until I started to uncover these stories and these beliefs that I had that I was able to find fulfillment within who I was, not in what I was creating. And that's a totally different energy. And really like that I've personally seen a significant difference in over the last year, momentum wise, because I've done this deeper work. And I've really, really focused on who do I want to become? Not what is my circumstance right now, but how am I going to feel when I achieve these things? Because it's not about the achievement. It's about how it makes you feel, how it makes you think, right? The things that you're doing. And I no longer have, my nervous system is calm. I know when it's not and what I need to do. And it's the internal work that changes that. And I'm really uncovering those beliefs and rebuilding a new story. And that's where the positive thinking then comes in, right? Once you've dug up the root, then we can start to nurture the plant and it can start to grow and, bloom and all those things. So I hope that answered your question.
You answered the question better than I could have asked you to.
Okay, good.
Because first of all, like there's the vulnerability of where we have come from and why we now know what we do about success without sacrifice is always something that I think is good for other people to hear, because statistically speaking, by the way, a girl's confidence peaks at age 9. So that's about right around that fourth grade stamp for you. And I think it is so critical. And this is something that took me a while to realize as well, which is the belief system that we carry with us, because a lot of it is inherited and given to us. And I would say the majority of people don't ever do the work to look at it and evaluate it and see how and whether or not it's serving us in adulthood or in, the purpose that we want to carry out. And that is exactly what you described as this idea of like needing to go down and see what's up with the roots before we know what kind of nutrients to give the plant.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect way to say that. Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say something, but I lost it. But it's all good. I'll let you carry on.
That's okay. I have a feeling it's going to come back to you, because what I want to ask you now is, how do we do this? Right. So maybe some like practical tools, a quick exercise, or just in general, what are some ways that we can actually practically start moving away from, the pressure, the hustle, the depleted mindset? I call that the martyr mindset, by the way, that we have to like pay for our success. How do we start like really practically making steps to move away from that?
So, for me, well, number one, I'll say do the values exercise that we already talked about. That's number one, because if you aren't clear on that, it doesn't matter what you do moving forward. And then once you have created that circle and what's inside of it, then asking yourself, what's preventing me from protecting what's inside of this circle, right? Because that's going to start to bring the awareness. Once you start asking the why do I believe this? Why do I think this? Why do I feel this way? Then you start to have the awareness. And it's not all going to come at once, right? It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You're going to have one layer and you're going to peel that away and you're going to do the work. And then you're going to get to a new level and there's going to be another layer. And then you're going to get to a new level and there's going to be another layer, right?
And that one might be rotten,
yeah,
right? So God's not linear.
Yeah. So I think, number one, do the values exercise. And then number two, start asking, why is this so hard for me to protect this? And I think of it as peace. For me, for the longest time, I was like, I just want to feel peaceful. And I did not feel peaceful. I just felt constantly stressed, constantly worried. I had pain in my body. That's another sign of burnout. If you have pain and inflammation in your body, you have chronic autoimmune issues, that's something to pay attention to. And I just lost my train of thought again. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm just coming off of surgery. Angie and I were just talking about this. So
we're just lucky Cheree is here, and don't worry at all.
Like it's just like gone. I'm like in the middle of talking something and there just went.
Talk more about the pain in the body thing, because I think that's also something we ignore, right? We get so in our heads with decision making and things like that. We ignore the mind body, like the physiological connection that can really signal these things. So whether that was where you're going or not, I would love for that to be where you go now.
Yeah. Yes, pain is your body saying pay attention, right? Yep. Whether it's a headache or it's stomach issues or it's chronic pain, diseases. I am convinced that 98% of our pain and stuff that's inside of our bodies is because of stress and beliefs. And I can personally tell you that and attest to that because after I started doing the internal work, a lot of that pain started to go away. A lot of the stress started to go away. And I can, even like in my husband, we talk about this, right? I can tell when he's stressed at work because he starts waking up with headaches every day and all of that. And so if you're having any sort of pain in your body, it's one thing if it's genetic, right? But here's the thing, and you had mentioned this earlier. We, a lot of times our DNA and our beliefs are not even necessarily something we observed. It could be from our ancestors, right? Something that happened to them that gets encoded into our DNA. And so those are all signs to pay attention. If you're having pain, fatigue, sleep issues, all of that are signs that you're pushing your body too hard. And we didn't talk about this, but when I worked with sports, for a lot of years, I started to recognize that there's a system, right? They use a system. Take an Olympic swimmer, for example, they have a 4-year training plan and they have seasons within that training plan that are very intentional, that includes rest. Because if they do not rest, if they don't get enough rest, they will burn out or injure. If they get too much rest, they won't peak at the right time. They won't be at the right performance level. And in business and work, I think we expect ourselves to be able to function at 100% capacity 24/7. right?
Yep.
When we try to sleep, our brains don't want to shut off. And we're in such this society that we don't know how to just slow down and turn off our brains and turn off work and phones. And there's so many distractions, right? And all of that contributes to what you are feeling inside of your body. And so when I started to notice where I hold stress, when I'm going to make a decision, right? I've learned to tune into my body. And this is what we teach athletes, right? If you don't teach an athlete why it's important to rest, psychologically, physically, they are the same as business owners. Like they have a goal and they want to get to it, and teaching them to rest is really hard. And it's also a key part of their performance plan. And it should be for us as well. But there's this fear that like rest is lazy, rest is bad. It's going to set me back. I'm not going to hit my goals. And it's just not true. And so something I teach is called the RAMP method. It's an acronym, stands for Rest, Align, Master, Peak. And it's literally creating seasons within your business, just like the seasons of sports. And it gives you the permission that it's okay to rest. It's okay to slow down. Every industry has slow times. And what do we want to do when it's slow? We want to push harder. But what if instead you allowed your body, your business, your team to go internal, to rest, to recover, to reset? So then that way you are ready for game time on Saturday or next month or whenever it is, right? Rest is so crucial to your performance. And I don't just mean sleep. I mean mental, emotional, physical, spiritual rest.
That's another episode that we will not go there, but there are like 7 different types of rest. It isn't just I need more sleep. There are many different types of rest that you need to kind of like make sure that you're getting. And the biggest thing, I love that this idea that like, think about the Olympic athlete and like a 4-year training cycle. Nothing, including a professional athlete, is meant to go 100%. But we put that pressure on ourselves, and then we get to this like breaking point because it's absolutely just not sustainable. And so here's what I want to ask you. How do we do this? How do we do this better from like a modeling perspective, right? How do we model both healthier lifestyles to support success for teams if we're leaders, clients if we're coaching, kids if we're parents, in communities, right? I think that this is something that we're becoming slightly more aware of than we ever were before. And so how do we lead the way and model this better?
Yeah. Boundaries, right? What I do personally is I create yes and no zones for myself, because especially when I was a stay-at-home mom and running my business from home at the same time, I was always on my phone. And so, my kids would come up and be like, hey mom, we need something. I'm like, hold on, I'm reading an article about how to be a good mom. That's not right. Like, oh my gosh. Like, but that's where we're at. And so, I think it comes from modeling, taking time off. And I did a podcast interview with somebody else, and she was like, I feel like I have to make up excuses for my team. Like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment. Like, she's like, or if I want to like watch a Netflix show and I know my husband's going to be home, like I turn it off. Or like, she's like, he doesn't care, but she's like, but it's like inside of me that I have to make an excuse for rest. And so I think we model it by saying, I'm taking this time off. I take 2 weeks off every Christmas. Completely. No phone. I turn off social media. I don't look at anything. I read a book. I do things that, we play with family, and people are like, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. And it might be hard, but your business, if you have the right systems, that's part of it too, right? You have to have the right systems and processes in place in order to be able to take that time off. And if you don't have those systems and processes in place, you need to get them in place. Because even when people take vacation, they're still checking their phones, right? They're still responding to stuff. And so I think it comes like, it sounds simple, but it's hard. But taking time off and their head doesn't have to be an excuse. You get to say, I'm taking this time off to take care of myself, to be with my family, right? And back to the yes and no zones. So for me, in the evenings, because it's just such a habit to go to your phone, right? Like we don't know how to be bored.
There's yet like a 57th podcast episode we could have from this conversation. We do not know how to be bored.
No. And it's just this habit. And so I realized like I had this habit to pick up my phone and check Facebook or whatever it was, even though I'm not getting anything from it. And so I create yes and no zones. And so in the evening after 6:30 is a no zone for my phone and it's a yes zone for my family. So after dinner time, I'm not attached to my phone at all, usually, unless there's, something going on or I'm at a networking event or, whatever. There's flexibility with it. But for me, the time screen limits, like all of that stuff, it didn't work. And so I had to create like systems for myself to allow my brain to disconnect. Because we don't even know half the time when we pick up our phone and we're looking at email or Facebook. And we just are doing it in a habit. It's really not serving us. It's not doing anything for us. But it's not until we recognize that and we have systems to help us break those habits.
And you have to find the systems that work for you. I think that's a really good point because it isn't the same for everyone. App timers don't work for me. I'm also like, even just, and I think that's similar to the fact that like, I'm not a reward system person. I am not I get to buy X once I hit Y milestone. I'm just going to buy myself X. Right. And so I think that there's a similar psychology there and you have to see kind of what works for you. But the biggest thing I want to make the point about is that rest is not a reward, even though our society has created an ecosystem where it certainly feels that way. It's a requirement because you can't go 100% of the time. And most of the time, even when we think we're resting, we're not, because we are not very good about letting our brains be bored. And here you go. Newsflash to bring the whole thing full circle. Good ideas don't come from anti-boredom, right? That's why we come up with good ideas in the shower and in the car, because we're not actually doing anything else that is as much of a distraction. And so I think that's a good point. And I think I really liked what you said, Cheree, about like, if you don't have the systems that allow you to rest, focus on getting the systems in place that allow you to rest. Because the worst thing you can do is go on vacation and then come back and need a vacation from the inbox post-vacation, right? And I know this is some of the place in which you work. So now it's time for shameless plug. How does everybody, keep in touch with you and learn more about like RAMP and some of the systems and support that you offer for, people like me and high-performing entrepreneurs and leaders who are just doing a little too much? How do we find you?
Yeah. So you can find me at Cheree Sauer on Facebook, Instagram, Cheree Sauer Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And then my business page is Success Without Sacrifice Coaching on all those same platforms.
And we will, of course, link to all of that in the show notes. And I'm actually going to bring up one more link. If you don't think values are important, you clearly have not listened to all of the 238 episodes of this podcast where they are talked about 295 times. You can go to scarygoodread.com/values and actually get a core values exercise, because that is so critical to the inner circle that Cheree talked about, that it is like an entire chapter of my book in order to set that foundation so that you know how and what you're willing to trade off and sacrifice, because you've done the work to know what's most important to you and what you want success to look like. So there's an additional link to add to all of the things, just to reinforce how important that is to knowing what your definition of success looks like. And so again, we'll put all of the links, including how to find Cheree, here on the show notes. If you're listening on LinkedIn, you can go find her. She and I are connected and she's a great follow. And as we kind of wrap things up, I'm going to ask a question that's going to be interesting considering everything we've talked about, because, a lot of this is like, how do we be human? How do we be more purposeful, sustainable humans? But also, how do we do that considering just what the future of work and technology is doing? So, in your opinion, what's the future of work look like? And most importantly, how do we stay human while we're navigating it?
Oh, yeah. For me personally, and this is what I have all of my clients do. Number one, when you wake up, your phone is not the first thing you work at. It's not the first thing you look at, right? Number two, journaling and starting your day in a quiet, peaceful space where you can get into alignment, and starting your day from that place of peace, because that is going to completely change how you show up. It's going to change your actions. It's going to change everything. And starting your day without technology in your face I think is the best way to do it, because it's a part of our life. It is, we need it, right? We're not going to get away from it, but you can create space away from it. And that's what I personally do. It's what I don't make them, right? But that's what I have all my clients do. It's one of the very first things we do when they enter in my programs is creating that space in the moment without technology.
Give yourselves a half an hour, just a half an hour for you before you go give all of that to the world, because you can't fill from an empty cup, which is exactly what we're talking about when we think about how to be intentional about your success and how to get that without sacrificing life or yourself along the way.
Yeah.
There you go.
So good.
This has been amazing. Cheree, thank you so much for being here and reminding us that we do not have to grind ourselves into an oblivion in order to build something meaningful or feel like we're a success. And so I appreciate you being here, being vulnerable, and sharing both your story and your wisdom with us on No More Mondays.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
To all of you out there, we've got great show notes and great links, so check them out. And if you are feeling the weight of success, I hope this conversation was a little bit of a sign or a nudge to maybe start thinking about how you can shift your story and maybe even just make some small changes that are going to make a little bit of space for you and the human living inside that you are still permitted to be. And as always, let Cheree and I know how we can help. And in the meantime, I will see you next week for another edition of